All right, everybody, welcome to part 2 of this discussion on Yahweh, the flip-flopper. Now let's look at what the Bible says about what the fruit of Yahweh's Spirit is. Yahweh the flip-flopper sends mixed messages here as well. Mixed messages across the board with this character, right? According to the following passages, Yahweh's fruit is said to be good. Galatians 5:22, for example, Paul says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith." But then, according to this next passage, Yahweh's fruit is bad. 1 Samuel 18, verses 10 and 11 says, "And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house." An evil spirit came forth from the Lord. I thought Yahweh only gave good fruits through his Spirit, right? The fruits of the Spirit are good. Here we see now an evil spirit coming forth from the Lord. How could something good come from an evil spirit? But again, this evil spirit comes from the Lord. It goes on to say, "And David played with his hand, his harp, as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand, and Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice." He was able to avert getting harmed. But you see what was going on here, right? An evil spirit went forth from the Lord to incite this evil deed. And yet, again, Paul says that only good comes from God's Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, blah, blah, blah. Mixed messages from a mixed book, which talks about this mixed-up God, right? One minute, yes, he seems so loving, and that's what Bible dupes like to focus on, but the next minute, a raging psychopath, right? The best you can say about this monstrosity is that the thing is schizophrenic, right? But again, Bible dupes ignore those passages. They claim the Bible doesn't contradict itself because they only read the parts they like. They didn't examine it before they bought the product, right? They took what the salesman said at face value, bought the thing, and, now you try to show them that, hey, you didn't look the product over before you bought it. Let me show you the problems with it. Oh, they won't listen to you now. They've already bought it. They're convinced it's good. And, they're loyal to the corporation that sold the product to them and produced it, right? i.e. the church. So they're not going to leave the church. They're not going to turn their back on the product. They're going to defend it, even though the damn thing is toxic for them, right? Again, had they only examined it before they bought it, had they ever looked at it critically first, they never would have bought it in the first place. If they, before they ever got themselves suckered by it and accepted it as, quote, the Word of God, if they had first looked at it, if they were shown the problems with it, they never would have fallen for it, right? Oh, but once they fall for it, you can show them those problems and it doesn't matter. It would have mattered big time, again, if they were shown ahead of time, right? Oh, it would have definitely mattered. But once they bought it, once they became convinced that it is, in fact, God's Word, you can show them that the product is severely defective and even, the opposite of what they have been told it was. Doesn't matter now. For most of them, most of the time, most of them are never going to listen. They'll write you off. Is Yahweh peaceable? Again, Bible believers are convinced that he is, right? And they'll cite any number of passages to try to prove that point, like the ones we're going to be looking at now. For example, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4 says, And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, right? So Bible dupes are looking forward to this. They think Yahweh is going to bring them such a world. Look what his Chosenites are bringing to us now. Look what they've always brought. They love war, right? Since when have they ever loved peace? They're promising peace, though, once they get their Jew world order in place. And what do they mean by that? They mean the same thing this Isaiah passage means. Let the Jew rule, and there won't be war anymore. There won't be need for war because they will control everything. Their version of peace means the absence of opposition. And the absence of opposition means that you have been disarmed as an individual, as well as all nations of the world, so that no nation or individual or group of individuals within a nation will be able to resist their authority. They will have a monopoly on all the weapons. That's what the UN is all about, right? That's the kind of peace this is talking about. But in any case, Bible dupes will cite passages like that to make it out to look like, this is what God is all about. He's all about peace. We just got to turn to him and he'll bring us peace. Here's another one, Romans 15, verse 33. The God of peace be with you all, says Paul. So Yahweh is supposed to be the God of peace. Well, he's also called the God of love, right? He's said to be love incarnate. But we've seen there's nothing loving about the character, right? And so here he's saying that he's the God of peace. No, he's not. This God, all over the place, all throughout the Old Testament, and also in the New, but not as much as in the Old, all throughout the Old Testament, on basically every page of the damn collection of books, you have that God commanding warfare, right? Getting off on it. Yeah, he's the God of peace, all right. Acts 10:36 says, the word which God sent unto the children of Israel, preaching peace by Jesus Christ. Preaching peace by Jesus Christ. Did Jesus Christ preach peace, Bible dupes? Oh, they would answer in the affirmative, most assuredly. Oh, yes, of course, he's the Prince of Peace. Don't forget, Christ himself said, do not think that I have come to bring peace. I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. Yeah, he came to bring peace, all right. I came to turn a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a father-in-law against the mother-in-law, and a brother against the sister, and a sister against the brother, and on and on and on, right? He said, a man's enemies will be those of his own household. Christ said he himself came to bring that kind of division. Division in the household. He came to bring, not peace. Don't think I've come to do that. I haven't. I've come to bring a sword. He said it. And yet Bible dupes are convinced that, oh no, Jesus is the Prince of Peace. He gives us perfect peace that passes all understanding. Blah, 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 blah. Even though they know full well deep down inside, even as they say that they don't have peace. They don't have farragon peace. 8 years of pastoral experience showed me that Christians don't have peace. And by the way, it wasn't just people in my church. I had contact with a lot of other Christians in other churches too, other denominations, and they all suffered from the same problem. Christianity doesn't bring peace, even though it lies and says it does. And believers will claim that, yes, I have the perfect peace of Jesus, but they're lying when they say it. At the time, they might mean it because they feel good at that given moment, but 5 minutes later, or the next day, or 2 days later, they're going to slump right back into that misery again, as I have seen over and over and over from believers of all ages, right? It was especially disheartening for me to see that with believers that were 30, 40, 50 years my senior at the time, right? I looked up to these people that had been Christians longer than I'd ever been alive, and yet they didn't have this peace. It was very upsetting for me. I couldn't understand it, right? But as time went on, you go through that school of hard knocks, and then you realize, wow, what I had was just the illusion. I was still wet behind the ears, still in my 20s, hadn't experienced life long enough to see that the religion doesn't work. That's why they go to church every week, though, because they got to get together with other believers who fall for the delusion so they can pat each other on the back and convince each other. It helps when you have other people falling for the same delusions you are. It reinforces the idea that what reality tells you isn't really what's happening. I am happy. See, these other people are happy. And you might be happy at that moment because you're not going through the stress of the week and you feel rejuvenated now. You're with your fellow believers who are stroking your ego and making you feel good and reminding you of how happy you are or how happy you're supposed to be. 5 minutes out of that church, though, or maybe 10 or 20, it's different for different people. But certainly by the next day, it's back to business as usual. Now you're miserable as you ever were once again, and you can't wait for church again so you can get what they think is revived by the Spirit. No, so you can get back to your distraction, right? That's the reason people turn to the bottle or to pot or whatever drug of choice, right? To drown out their sorrows. They're convinced that the alcohol or the pot or whatever is solving their problems because it makes them feel so good and they can't wait to feel good again. And at the moment they're getting high or drunk, they do feel good, right? That temporary feeling of euphoria makes them feel great. But then it wears off and it's back to the same crap as usual, right? Back to reality. So it is going to church. That's the same thing. It's a temporary fix. It's like hitting the bottle, smoking the joint, whatever, right? It gives you a temporary fix, a temporary moment of euphoria. You think that you're feeling great, and now you can claim to have that peace that passes all understanding. Yeah, you're being distracted. You have that peace for that moment, right? It's the same peace the drunk gets, hitting the bottle, or the pot addict gets, smoking a joint, right? Temporary, fleeting moment of seeming peace. But it's not doing anything for you in the real world. It's just the illusion thereof. I've had people get mad at me. Why are you trying to ruin people's faith? You're trying to make them depressed and... Oh, no. I'm trying to get them to stop hitting the bottle, if you will, or relying on pot, if you will, to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet as adults, put on the big boy pants or the big girl dress, and stop living in a fantasy world. It's not doing a damn thing for you, in spite of the fact that you're so adamant on convincing yourself that it is, and hanging out with others that believe the same delusions who help to convince you that it's true. It doesn't make it true, though, does it? No. That touchy-feely, feel-good feeling, it's just an illusion. It's the goddamn sugar pill, the placebo effect, right? That's all you get. That's all anyone has ever gotten. That's all anyone ever will get from this religion, or any other for that matter, but especially the Abrahamics, right? They're most known for making these grandiose promises that are all lies. It's just a placebo effect. You feel good temporarily for the moment you're with fellow believers on church day, or get together with them Wednesday night and go bowling, because they're all living that same delusion and reinforcing your lies. So you feel good at that moment. But then you're right back into the dumps again, right? Because it's not really doing anything for you. Again, it's just those few fleeting moments of temporary euphoria. The placebo pill. Believe it or not, as miserable as this world can be, you can learn to be happy in spite of it all. You can do it yourself. You have to make the choice. Only you can do it for yourself. Stop looking outside yourself to fictitious, phony religions, phony holy books, phony gods who are hypocritical monstrosities that screw up your sense of morality. Your moral compass is all topsy-turvy, doesn't know which way to point because it's pointing you in 1,000 different directions at once at any given moment. Knock it off. Stop doing this to yourself. Stop allowing other people to do this to you, to manipulate you, to play with your frickin' head. Learn to stand on your own 2 damn feet. I was just talking with a friend who was asking me, how I can get through the trauma of this world and keep my sanity. Well, there's many ways. I keep busy. I'm always planning stuff with friends, family, going out for bike rides, hikes, you name it. But beyond that, it's a personal philosophy I learned from my mother, And it wasn't her own, but, you know, it's something that worked for her, and it works for me too. She passed it on to me. Her basic philosophy in life was hope for the best, but expect the worst. And when the worst comes, and living in this world, that's more how it turns out more often than not, right? When something bad comes your way, you won't be disappointed, right? Or as disappointed. You'll be prepared for it because you're expecting it. You're hoping for something better. You're planning for something better, right? But you don't have your hopes up that it's necessarily going to come to fruition. You do your best so that it does. And if it does, well, hey, that's great. But you know that something's going to come down the pike 5 or 10 minutes later that's going to take away that euphoric feeling. You got to try to work at it to bring euphoria. Just like if you want to look good, right? Be toned up, exercise. You got to work at it. You got to eat better. You got to sleep better. You got to drink more water. You got to get more exercise. You got to work at it to look good and feel good. If you don't, then you're just going to go south, right? Automatically, by default, it's just going to happen. Well, it's that way, you know, in the spiritual realm, if you will. You know, if you want to have a positive attitude in life, you got to work at it. If you don't, you're just going to spiral down. Just like your body's going to fall apart if you don't work at keeping it in optimal function, right? You got to work at it. That's how this world operates. Good things don't come naturally. Bad things do, though. The law of entropy. You just wait, and bad things are going to happen. Things are going to fall apart. Your body's going to age. You're going to get wrinkles. You're going to put on weight. You know, your teeth are going to fall out, right? Unless you are actively working to thwart the law of entropy, right? Entropy applies across the board. Even in your social life, things are going to fall apart, right? Your work life. If you're not constantly working, to make the boss happy and keep the production up, whatever, right? Of course, your job's going to go out the window. They're going to get rid of you. You got to keep active. You don't just sit there on your fat ass at work and think that your boss is going to be happy and that's going to give you job security. You got to work your tail off. Sometimes even then it doesn't matter anymore, does it? That used to be how it worked. But you get my point, right? Christians sit on their ass. For the most part, they do. They think that God is going to fix it. I don't have to do anything. In fact, if I do something, that would be interfering with God's divine plan. That would be bordering on blasphemy. So Christians don't do a damn thing. They especially, for the most part anyway, they especially don't believe in doing anything to try to fix this frigged up world of ours. They think, oh, it's all part of God's divine plan. It's playing out exactly the way he wants. We're just to sit back and pray about it. That is to say, do nothing. Oh, that book taught them well. That's just what the Zio bastards who created that book want. They want you to sit on your ass and think the little sky fairy, who happens to be their tribal god, who only gives a crap about them and promised them world government to begin with. They want you to sit back and think he's going to come rescue you, when all he's working for, if the thing is real, is to bring about their domination of the world. I will bring all nations before you. They will bow before you and lick the dust from the soles of your feet. You think that God is going to rescue you from this system? Really? You've reached the peak of gullibility, if that's what you think. Anyway, moving on here. I really got off on a tangent there. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says, "For God is not the author of confusion." God is not the author of confusion. That's a real knee slapper right there. The whole Bible is confusion. And since it is confusion, then there could be no God behind it who's not the author of confusion. If there's any God behind it, then he's the God of confusion, right? And that's just what Mr. Yahweh is, the great flip-flopper. Anyway, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. Of peace. Yahweh is the God of peace. Again, Bible dupes will cite this with glee and think that they've got some solid foundation to stand on. See, I worship the God of peace. God of peace? This is the God who actually says in the Old Testament that he is a man of war. A man of war. Well, we don't need him to admit that. We can see he is, right? He's commanding bloodshed all over the place. He commanded specifically to kill everything that breathes, including young suckling infants. To rip up the wombs of pregnant women. Oh, he's the God of peace, though, isn't he? 2 Corinthians 13:11 says, "The God of love and peace shall be with you." No thanks. I don't want his version of love and peace, which is the antithesis of love and peace. Finally, Bible dupes will point to this passage, 2 Thessalonians 3:16. Paul says, "May the Lord of peace himself give you peace always." The Lord of peace. The one who said, think not that I have come to bring peace. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Yeah. You think you're going to get peace from that thing? But anyways, nevertheless, Bible dupes blindly and naively cling with tunnel vision just to passages like that, ignoring other passages like these. Exodus 15, verse 3. The Lord is a man of war. There you go. This is the passage I was just referring to. The Lord is a man of war. Yeah, he's about peace, all right. Exodus 17:16 says, because the Lord has sworn that he will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Yeah, he's the Lord of war, all right, or man of war. He swore that there would be war with Amalek from generation to generation. Man of peace, God of peace. Numbers 25, verse 4 says, and the Lord said unto Moses, take all thy heads of the people, and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. Hang their heads up. Hang them. Hang them till they die. Hang them up before the Lord, that the anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. You want me to stop being angry with Israel? Hang these people up for me to see. I like to see people hanging from the neck. It turns me on. But he's a God of peace, right, Bible dupes? He's a psycho. Here's one of my favorites. Jeremiah chapter 51, starting with verse 20. Yahweh is depicted as saying, you are my battle axe and sword. He's telling this to Israel. With you I will shatter nations and destroy many kingdoms. With you I will shatter armies, destroying the horse and the rider, the chariot and the charioteer. With you I will shatter men and women, old people and children, young men and maidens. With you I will shatter shepherds and flocks, farmers and oxen, captains and rulers. This is your God of peace talking, Bible dupes. You claim to listen to all that your God says. Well, why don't you listen to this? Why don't you let this sink in and realize he's not the God of peace now, is he? Obviously not. But do catch how Yahweh said that through Israel he would do what? He would shatter nations. Through what? Through war. Yeah. Looks like he's playing out his favorite game right now as we speak, right? Just like with World War I, World War II, all the Cold War fiascos. Indeed, every major war throughout history for the past 3,500 years. Numbers 32:14 says, and behold, ye are risen up in your father's stead, an increase of sinful men, to augment yet the fierce anger of the Lord toward Israel. So here's Yahweh talking about his fierce anger. In this case, toward Israel. Oh yeah, he would throw temper tantrums and kick their asses every once in a while if they didn't kiss up to his every wish. But again, does this sound like a God of peace to you? You know it isn't, Bible dupes. You're afraid to answer in the negative because you think that this fire-breathing dragon is going to fry your ass. Well, you know, my attitude is I really don't care. I don't care if he exists. Obviously, this whole book is a fairy tale, right? But even if it were true that this thing existed, are you going to bow to its every whim just because you're afraid of it? Really? Really? This thing isn't worthy of being bowed to. Funny how you claim to be opposed to the devil because the devil is evil, and yet you bow before Yahweh when he commands evil stuff and says evil things like this and does evil things? Really? Why aren't you devil worshippers, Bible dupes? Well, guess what? The reality is, if you continue to worship this demon called Yahweh, having heard what a monster he is, you are now officially a devil worshipper. How does that grab you? Because Yahweh is the devil. If Yahweh or if the devil has a name, that name is Yahweh. He meets all the identifying marks of what the Bible says about the devil. Deuteronomy 6:15 says, "For the Lord thy God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of the Lord thy God be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth." That's Yahweh. Just waiting for the moment. Unless you appease his wrath and kiss his frickin' hindparts, he's just waiting for the moment to fry your fanny and wipe you off the face of the earth, to destroy you utterly. But he's a God of peace, isn't he? You know what? I'm not going to read all these because, quite frankly, it would take the whole rest of the video. They just go on. And this list that I have cited here is by no means exhaustive. Oh, there's a hell of a lot more passages like this. But what I'll do is I'll just cite them, and you can look them up in your own time. Deuteronomy 9, verses 7 and 8. Deuteronomy 29, verse 20. Psalm 18, verse 34. Psalm 144, verse 1. Isaiah 42, verse 13. Isaiah 51, verse 15. Jeremiah 17, verse 4. And Joel 3, verses 9 and 10. Oh, also Hebrews 12:29, which says, our God is a consuming fire. Yeah, he's all about peace, right? He's out to fry your fanny. He's a man of war or a god of war. He commands war all over the place. Bloodshed, killing everything that breathes, show mercy to none, kill the little infants, kill the fetuses in their mother's womb by ripping up her womb. On and on and on and on and on. So this thing can claim to be about peace, or his fan club in this book of his can make all the claims they want that he's a God of peace. I don't care about those claims when his track record clearly demonstrates he's not about peace. His little spawn himself said, "Don't think that I came to bring peace. I didn't come to do that. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword." I rest my case. Yahweh and Yahweh Jr. condemn their own selves in their own words and actions. But you know the kind of crap that will come out of that hole under their nose from Bible dupes? You know what they'll say? "You're trying to make sense of the infinite with your finite mind." Well, that's interesting, you dumbasses, because you believe that Yahweh created our brains, right? So do you think he would have given us a brain to think for ourselves? And yet, according to you, we're not supposed to think for ourselves. We're to check our brain at the door. "Why, our brains are harmful when it comes to God, questioning him. We're to question other things, but not God." Really? Yahweh himself said, "Come and see that the Lord is good. Come and taste and see for yourself." Well, I did taste. Finally, it took me a while. I finally did taste and saw that he's not good. Like most Bible dupes, when I was one, I hadn't done that. Shame on me. I didn't look at the merchandise before I bought it. I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. But years later, long after I bought the product and saw that it wasn't running right, that it in fact was running really crappily in spite of all the promises and the warranty. And when I finally looked at the product critically, I realized, son of a gun, I never should have bought this in the first place. This thing's defective. I'm taking it back. I wish you could cash it in and get your money back. I'd love to see a class action suit filed against some of these big name churches. Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? It's never been done, folks, and yet there's such great grounds for doing it. I'd love to see that just once, and that would set off a fury. You'd see people all over the place doing it. These things would go belly up overnight. Sue the bastards for their lying false promises, if nothing else. Sue them for all your back tithes and offerings. And they have record too, right? Oh yeah, they keep record, so they can send you the records at the end of the year so you can write off your contributions. Churches love that. That gets people to give more if they convince them that, hey, you can get it back at the end of the year, as a write-off. And doesn't that pervert your reason? If your reason for giving was to help the poor, not that churches even do that, but nevertheless, if your reason was to help the poor or to help save souls, you supposedly had a pure reason for giving, but now they corrupt it by telling you, oh, well, you can write off your contributions and get that money back. But they don't care. They love to do that, to dangle that carrot, because they know that you're likely to give more money. That's how they suckered them in with the 501c3 fiasco, the government, right? That's how they got churches to sign up for the 501c3. Oh, you don't need it constitutionally. Oh, you're already tax exempt. However, if you do get a 501c3, you'll be able to have your church members write off, their contributions on their taxes. Ooh, that's highly advantageous. I know they're likely to give more money if they know they can get it back. You see how the little game works? How they sucker them in? So many churches now have been doing this for so long that people assume that you have to have a 501c3 to function as a church. You can't function as a church and be tax exempt without the 501c3. It's not true, right? It's a lie. Just like the income tax, they snuck it on you with their little chicanery of the promise that, we're going to have this tax removed at the end of the war. And don't you want to do your patriotic duty by supporting the war with this measly 5% of your wages donated to the government to help the war effort, during World War II? The victory tax, they called it. They always like to throw those words out there. Freedom! The new freedom initiative! The victory tax! You want victory, don't you? You like freedom, don't you? So they put those phony names on there, those phony labels to lure people in. And now that so many people have been paying what began as only 5% and was supposed to be removed at the end of the war, it was never removed at the end of the war, and now you're paying upwards of 33%, 1/3 of your income, right? But because so many people have gotten suckered with this for so long, people assume that, well, I have to pay my fair share of the taxes. No, you don't. You're not liable for the income tax. It's a fraud, folks. And the only reason why they show up at your door with a SWAT team to steal your possessions because you refuse to pay what you are not even legally required to pay is because people don't know their goddamn rights, and scarcely can they afford the legal proceedings to fight for their rights. Gary Bannister was able to do that, and did do it. And he won. He beat the bastards in court. He proved before a grand jury that neither he nor anyone else was liable for the income tax. He won. Oh, but they made his life a miserable, rotten hell for him thereafter, right? To send a chilling message. If you try to follow in his footsteps, oh, yeah, sure, you might beat us. If we don't rig the trial better than we did with him, because after all, you will have the law on your side. But we have firepower on our side. Why, we can put a lien on your bank account. We can seize your money. What a miserable, rotten fraud. And people think we live in a free country, just like they think Yahweh is the God of peace, right? been lied to about everything under the sun. So the question is, do you want to continue to be lied to and go along with the lies and defend the lies? Or do you want to set yourself free from them finally? The truth does set you free. I have to agree with Jesus on that one. The problem is, Jesus was a lie peddler. He wasn't a truth peddler. Does Yahweh help those who are in need? The Bible dupe would answer, well, yes, of course. And they'll cite passages to back that up. But in typical flip-flop Yahwehtian fashion, there are also passages that make it clear that Yahweh won't help you. And you don't even have to consult those passages, right? Just look out at the reality of life. Look at the believers around you who claim that God is helping them. Oh, yes, I'm praying all the time. I know God is helping me. He's not, is he? Of course not. Of course not. They suffer with debt, with loss of jobs, broken homes, family members dying of cancer and whatnot, just as readily as anybody else, right? There's no indication that Christians are receiving divine help any more than a non-believer, right? And yet Jesus said, your heavenly Father shines and reigns upon the righteous and the just. More like he craps on the righteous and the just equally, right? There's nothing to indicate that the believer has any advantage over the non-believer. They screw up as much, sometimes even more so. In fact, I'll argue most of the time they screw up more so than the non-believer. Charisma Magazine will back me up on that, right? Domestic abuse is higher in Christian homes than in non-Christian homes. They sin just as much as non-believers, if not more so. They make mistakes. They have bad things happen to them. What is the advantage then, really? Just the illusion, just the delusion that one day you're going to live with Jesus in heaven. Yeah, and do what? Sit around the throne and sing the eternal praises day and night. Whatever, man. But seriously, you would think if there was any legitimacy to this bitch of a religion, that you would be able to see signs of it, right? Some Christians would say, well, I know Billy Joe Batson down the street doesn't beat his wife anymore. God delivered him from that. Oh, you can stop beating your wife without the religious trappings. Many people have, right? You don't need religion for that. And even if a religious person stops beating his wife, again, it's for the wrong reason, right? Stop beating her because it's wrong, not because you want to go to heaven or avoid hell. That's not a legitimate reason for stop beating your wife. That's not real reformation, because guess what? If Billy Joe Batson discovers one day that the Bible's full of crap, most likely Billy Joe Batson is going to go back to his old ways and start beating his wife again. Whereas if he was taught true morality, doing what's right for the sake of it being right, and ceasing to do what's wrong because it's wrong, he won't want to do it anymore, right? Not out of fear of hell or desire for heaven, but out of a desire to do what's right and to not do what's wrong. That's real morality. Not following what some arbitrary scumbag in the sky commands, who changes his mind at any given moment and has you doing the very things he commanded you for in the previous breath, commanded you against doing in the previous breath, right? Bible dupes actually claim that they're against moral relativism. They claim that Yahweh's standards are universal and they apply at all times in all situations. And yet, when you show them that clearly Yahweh himself didn't keep his own commandments and commanded mass murder, he was a psychopath, blah, 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 they'll say, well, he's God and he can do anything. They make up all these excuses when, in fact, they're embracing moral relativism, aren't they? When they give Yahweh a free ride, or Yahweh's chosenites, who engaged in mass ethnic cleansing on a constant basis on every page of that frickin' book, they make excuses for it, which is moral relativism at its finest, isn't it? So much for your claim to believe in, to be opposed to moral relativism, Bible dupes. You're not opposed to it. Your whole belief system is based on that cracked foundation, making up excuses for Yahweh and his chosen ones. when they don't live up to high, lofty standards. They never live up to high, lofty standards. Psalm 22:24 says, "For he, Yahweh, has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted." In other words, he hasn't turned his back on us when we're afflicted. "Neither has he hid his face from him," from the afflicted. "But when he cries unto him, he hears." Well, again, that's pretty much what Jesus said to his disciples, right? "I am with you always, even unto the end of the world." I'm there with you. I'm not going to do a damn thing for you, but I'll be there with you. That's what this is saying, right? When the righteous cry out to him, he hears. Yeah? Okay, big deal. He hears you crying out. What is the son of a bitch going to do for you? Nothing. Nothing. Nevertheless, though, Bible dupes love to cling to this. God hears my prayers, and I know he answers, because he promised. He has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted. What does it matter to say something like that? Okay, he doesn't despise you when you're afflicted, but is he going to help you? Nevertheless, though, Bible dupes read into this as though Yahweh's going to help them. Here's another passage along this line, Psalm 46, verse 1. "God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in time of need," or in time of trouble. A very present help. How does he help? He doesn't help. Ever. Doesn't do a damn thing. But passages like this sure help to buttress the delusion of believers that he does in fact help. No, he doesn't. Psalm 45, verse 18. "The Lord is near to all of those who call upon him." Again, he's near. Big deal. What's he going to do? There's several passages here that we're now looking at where it implies he's going to help, an ever-present help in time of need. But he doesn't help, does he? Numbers 1:7. "The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble." Yeah, baloney. So these are the kind of passages Bible dupes comfort themselves with, even though if you look at them, they're really not saying a hell of a lot, right? The only passage here out of all of these that implies that Yahweh was going to do anything was when it said a very present help in time of need. Well, what kind of help? Supposedly to give you strength so you can endure the trial, but he doesn't do a damn thing to alleviate you, to alleviate the troubles that befall you, right? Doesn't even mildly intervene to minimize them in any way. No. Never mind remove them. No. If anything, he maximizes them, right? Why would he even allow them to come your way? Oh, Bible dupes have all kinds of answers. Oh, well, he wants to strengthen my faith or give me patience, blah, blah, blah. The magic Yahweh couldn't just snap his fingers and give you those things. You're supposed to have the peace that passes all understanding, right? So why allow trials and tribulations your way that are going to rob you of that peace? It's such a disgusting lie, folks. But anyway, in spite of what these passages say or what Bible believers try to make them say, check out these next passages. 1 Samuel 8, chapter 8, verse 18 says, "And you shall cry out in that day because of your king, which you shall have chosen, and the Lord will not hear you in that day." Yahweh here was expressing disgust that Israel wanted to have a king when he supposedly didn't want them to have a king. This was the priesthood that was really opposed to that. They didn't want a king that was going to compete with them for power. They wanted to be in power. So they depicted their God as denouncing this whole idea of having a king. In any case, it doesn't matter. Bible dupes think that this is all divinely inspired by God. Okay, it's divinely inspired. Look what your God just said here. If the Israelites got a king, he wasn't going to hear them when they cried out for him to help them. The Lord will not hear you in that day when you cry out to him for help just because you wanted a king and got one. What if there were some Israelites that didn't want a king? Is he still going to ignore them too just because they're part of this group that did want a king? Kind of garbage is this. Psalm 10 verse 1 says, "Why do you stand afar off, O Lord? Why do you hide thyself in times of trouble? David said elsewhere that, in fact, we just read a passage where David said that God is a very present help in time of need, right? And yet this same David said here in this psalm, why do you stand afar off, O Lord? Why do you hide yourself in time of trouble? How could he be a very present help in time of trouble and yet be hiding himself in time of trouble? And David made both of these statements. Can you imagine that? David, it would be bad enough if two different Bible authors made those contradictory statements, but it was David himself that made both of them. A very present help in time of trouble. Where are you, O Lord, in time of trouble? Why do you hide yourself in such a time of trouble? Psalm 22, verses 1 and 2 says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This is what Jesus is alleged to have said while dying on the cross, right? At least according to one of the gospel writers. He said different things as his last words in the other gospels. But nevertheless, here he is quoting, or is portrayed as quoting from this psalm. My God, why have you forsaken me? Ultimately, though, it was David that wrote this, right? He's expressing his anguish that God has forsaken him. Why are you so far off? He says, so far off from helping me. This is the same guy who said, the Lord is a very present help in time of need. And yet here he is crying out, why are you so far off from helping me? Why have you forsaken me? And from the words of my roaring, he said, you have forsaken me. Oh my God, even in the daytime, you hear not my words. Not just when I cry out in the darkness of night, but even in broad daylight, I cry out to you where you can more easily see me. Funny how David didn't realize that Yahweh supposedly can see in the dark, but nevertheless, whether I cry out to you in the darkest of night or the brightest of day, where are you? You are not hearing me. See the mixed message? When Bible dupes are going through trouble in life, though, they ignore these passages. They'll just read the previous ones, a very present help in time of need, ignoring the fact that that same author, David, is the one who wrote these passages. Why have you forsaken me? Where are you? Why have you hidden your face in my hour of need? Again, guys, schizophrenic book with a schizophrenic message. Nobody would put up with this from any other book, right? If they bought a book that was supposed to be telling the story of why the Civil War happened, but it gave a lot of inconsistent facts that weren't facts at all, right? Contradictory statements, and answered the question of why we went to into the Civil War for reasons that weren't legitimate. People would be asking their money back, right? They would call the publisher and say, hey, stop publishing this book. It's a piece of crap. It's garbage. And yet they tolerate this from, a book that's supposed to be their most treasured possession, right? The most important book they have ever owned or ever could own. The book is crap. End of story. Isaiah 1:15 says, and when you spread forth your hands, speaking to Yahweh, or this is Yahweh speaking to Israel, when you spread forth your hands, in other words, reaching out to me for help, I will hide my eyes from you. Yea, when you make many prayers, I will not hear them. Imagine that. Yahweh is saying here, because you rebel against me, when you cry out to me for help, I'm not going to hear you. I'm going to turn deaf ears your way. And yet, it's said he's an ever-present help in time of need, right? Isaiah 45:15 says, verily, you are a God that hides thyself. Isaiah here, just like David, was expressing anguish. He was distraught over the fact that this God that he had looked to and depended upon was hiding his face. I've seen many Christians over the years, as you know, when I served as a pastor, many people would call me up for advice, and for prayer or whatever, with these same type of anguish feelings, right? Where is God? How come he's turned his back on me? I can't imagine what I'm doing wrong that he would be upset with me. This is what David and Isaiah are both saying in these passages that we're now reading. He's not there, even though David said elsewhere, a very present help in time of need. Here, David and Isaiah both have been crying out. He hides his face in our hour of need, right? Ezekiel 20, verse 3 says, thus says the Lord God, are you come to inquire of me? As I live, says the Lord God, I will not be inquired of by you. The great Oz has spoken. He's saying, you've come to inquire of me, and yet I will not be inquired of by you. I'm not going to answer your questions. I'm not going to satisfy your need for, whatever information is you're seeking. Not going to provide it. And yet, ever-present help in time of need. Habakkuk 1 verse 2 says, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Here we see Habakkuk also upset, as was David, as was Isaiah, right? He was also upset, as was Ezekiel, as we just saw, that the great Yahweh doesn't come through in time of need. You can cry out all you want, and he doesn't lift a damn finger, even though there's all these grandiose promises in the Bible of answered prayer, guaranteed answered prayer. Christ himself was most known for that, right? Knock and it shall be opened, seek and you shall find, ask and you shall receive. Whatsoever you ask for, I will do it, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. All lies, all lies, all lies. Finally, Hosea 5 verse 6 says, they shall go with their flocks and with their herds to seek the Lord, but they shall not find him. He has withdrawn himself from them. Wow. That's real encouraging, isn't it, Bible dupes? How come sermons aren't preached on passages like that? How come you don't consult these passages when you're discouraged? You only cherry pick, right? You only pick the ones that you like, that you want to hear, that say the things that you like. And yet there are mounds and mounds of other passages that outweigh the few you like to cling to. Mounds of other passages that say the absolute contrary, that Yahweh isn't a present help, that he turns a blind eye and a deaf ear, and apparently gets his rocks off on it too, right? There's a passage where Yahweh says, I will mock when your calamity comes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a real hamburger helper, isn't he? Yeah, he's a real handyman to have around. Sick, sick joke. When you cite passages like these to Bible dupes, they'll often say, well, it sounds terrible, but God had to turn his back on Israel on occasion because they were rebelling against him. Well, first of all, you're not going to tell me that every single person in the encampment was simultaneously turning their back, right? No, there were always those within the camp that were still kissing Yahweh's hind parts, praying to him, and weren't rebelling like the rest of the camp were. And yet Yahweh was still turning his back on them too, right? But it doesn't matter, because guess what? In this next passage, we're going to see that David was complaining to Mr. Yahweh for turning his back on them even when they weren't in rebellion. Psalm 44, verses 10 to 22. Here we read, David is talking to Yahweh here, and he says, you made us retreat before the enemy, and our adversaries have plundered us. You made us retreat, and yet all the while, all this did was to have our enemies come. They saw that, oh, we're running, we're afraid. So, they see us as weak now, and they plundered them. You gave us up to be devoured like sheep and have scattered us among the nations. David is blaming all of this on Yahweh, right? You got to love it. David didn't have much faith in Yahweh here, did he? And why? Because he recognized that this God was a sham, right? Of course he's going to complain. And I've heard so many Christians do this over the years. I keep praying and praying. I claim those promises. Whatever we ask, God will do it. And yet it never happens. So here's David expressing the same thing. Bible dupes would say, well, he was human, and yes, he went through his moments of doubt. He's expressing the reality of the situation, that your religion, your God, your holy book are incompetent. They don't do a damn thing for you any more than the bottle does for the drunk, right? The illusion, the sugar pill, the placebo effect. David went on to say, you sold your people for a pittance. Ooh, wow. Look at the accusation he's making here. Gaining nothing from their sale. You have made us a reproach to our neighbors, the scorn and derision of those around us. David here is blaming Yahweh for all of this. And why not, right? Where 1 minute he's making all these promises. I'll be with you. Fear not, he told Joshua, Have not I commanded you to be strong and of good courage? Be not afraid, for the Lord thy God is with thee. And yet, here's David saying, no, this God isn't with us. He's abandoned us. He went on to say, you have made us a byword among the nations. The people shake their heads at us. Well, in reality, Yahweh didn't do this. They did it to themselves, right? Because of their criminal activities then, just like now. But nevertheless, from the, quote, spiritual standpoint, this doesn't make any sense, right? I thought Yahweh's fan club was ever to be encouraging people to trust in Yahweh, that he will come through for them. Yeah, there are passages that say that. But the things that Bible dupes ignore, look at these. These are saying something entirely contrary, that Yahweh never comes through, right? That he turns a blind eye and a deaf ear. David went on to say, I live in disgrace all day long, and my face is covered with shame at the taunts of those who reproach and revile me, because of the enemy who is bent on revenge. All this came upon us, though we had not forgotten you. Now here's the crux of this passage. All of these miseries came upon us, David says to Yahweh, even though we had not forgotten you. So away with the idea, Bible dupes, that God only let afflictions strike Israel because they were rebelling against him. No, David here is saying we haven't forgotten you. We haven't turned our backs on you. And yet you're still letting miseries befall us? This is the same stuff I saw over and over again as a student and a lay pastor. People coming to me for pastoral counseling. They were so distraught, saying, I can't imagine what I've done. I haven't been rebelling against God. I pray every morning when I get up, pray before every meal, pray before bed. I'm constantly seeking his will, asking for his guidance, for victory over any temptations. I haven't yielded to any temptations that I know of recently, and yet God isn't answering me. He's abandoned me. This is what David is saying here, right? We don't deserve to be suffering this affliction. Well, they did. They always deserve it, don't they? But nevertheless, you understand the point, right? This God was supposedly making all these grandiose promises to them. And yet David's saying, what's going on here? The very opposite is happening. We're not being blessed for following you. We are following you. We haven't turned our backs on you. And yet we're still being afflicted. He said, we had not been false to your covenant. In other words, we've been true to your covenant. We've been following it. And you're still afflicting us? Our hearts had not turned back our feet had not strayed from your path. And yet, still you're doing this. So again, Bible dupes, no. Yahweh doesn't allow afflictions when just because people are rebellious against him. David is making it clear they didn't turn away from his path at all. They were totally aligned with his will, following everything he said, right? And yet Yahweh was still afflicting them. But you crushed us, David said, and made us a haunt for jackals. You crushed us, he said. You covered us over with deep darkness. If we had forgotten the name of the Lord God, or spread out our hands to a foreign god, would not God have discovered it, since he knows the secrets of the heart? In other words, if we had done something wrong, it would be self-manifest. You would have revealed it, and we would have realized that we needed to be punished with afflictions. But we haven't done this, he says, and yet you're still doing this to us? Yet for your sake, he said, we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to the slaughter. He's really landing some serious complaints toward Mr. Yahweh, right? We do everything you ask. We haven't rebelled, and yet you're still not blessing us. In reality, though, this is the plight of Bible believers today, right? The average mindless goy that worships that thing called Yahweh. Nothing goes right because even if Yahweh existed, he's not going to do anything to benefit them, right? He only cares about his chosen ones. The Bible will back that up 100%. What David really was complaining about here, though, it's not to be compared with the plight of Christian Gentile believers today, because what David was really saying is, Lord, why aren't you blessing us to be able to rip off the Goyim? They had some hardships here, right? They got taken into captivity, by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, again and again and again. And that's why David was crying out, why are you letting us get taken into captivity? You're supposed to intervene so we can get away with our crimes. That's really what his complaint was. Not, we're minding our own business, we're innocent, and we're getting afflicted. No, we're doing exactly as you promised, oh great frickin' demon in the clouds. You promised that we would rule over the nations, that we would be able to suck the milk of the Gentiles, and yet here we are doing just that, and you're not blessing us. Because they didn't have the system as rigged then as they do now. All their experiences taught them well. Okay, in the future, we got to make sure we don't leave the door open for this to happen again. We got to make sure that we have all the leaders in our pocket who are going to cooperate with us and help us sell the Goyim out, help us to maximize our exploitation of them, raping and pillaging them of all of their wealth, taking away all their rights, You won't hear a Jew today complaining like this, like David did in prayer, right? Oh no, they're praising God for blessing them today, aren't they? All of their blessings they have. Why, we've got all the parliaments infiltrated, all of the senates and the houses of representatives, and the parliaments, and on and on and on, right? We got all the members of parliament, the members of Congress, the House, the Senate, all the presidents, all the prime ministers, on and on and on. We got them all in our pockets, baby. We got the whole world in our hands. They're not praying to God now. Why are you afflicting us? Maybe a few dumbass Israelis are, who think that God let them get attacked the other day by Hamas, because they don't know their own government was behind it. But nevertheless, the elite Jews, they're not in anguish. Why is God punishing us? Not anymore, guys. They had trouble in the past, right? They made a lot of fallbacks because of their mistakes, but they learned from them. And they learned we got to really rig the game more thoroughly, more completely, so that our next attempt at world government will not fail, because they'll all be on board with us. They'll all be Freemasons and Rosicrucians and Bilderbergers and Trilateral Commission members and Council on Foreign Relation members. They'll all be members of one or more of our little bitch sellout secret societies. And that's why we're in the mess we're in now. That's why they don't need to be crying out in anguish anymore. In their estimation, their God is finally blessing them now, so that they can get away with their criminal activities and not be liable and not have any serious barriers placed in their way. Nevertheless, though, for you goyim fools that think that this God is there for you and going to help you, why can't you see he doesn't do a damn thing for you? Because A, he doesn't exist. Or, if you insist he exists, okay, well, B then. B, he exists, but you're a goyim. He doesn't care about you. All right, guys, that concludes this part of our discussion, but lots more to come on this. We'll catch you in the next video. Take care.